The rain drummed against the windows of Moonlight Manor as Isabella Rodriguez adjusted her diamond necklace for the third time. The 25-year-old socialite had spent 2 hours perfecting her appearance for tonight's charity gala, and she wanted everything to be flawless. After all, she was engaged to Marcus Blackwood, the most powerful man in the city, and everyone would be watching her every move. Isabella had grown up in luxury, the daughter of a wealthy real estate mogul. She had always gotten everything she wanted with a snap of her fingers or a flutter of her eyelashes. When Marcus had proposed to her 6 months ago at the city's most exclusive restaurant, she felt like she had won the ultimate prize. Marcus wasn't just rich, he was mysterious, commanding, and had an almost supernatural ability to get what he wanted in business and politics. Tonight's gala was being held at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, the most prestigious venue in the city. All of high society would be there, including the mayor, several senators, and celebrities from around the world. Isabella planned to make an entrance that would remind everyone exactly who ruled this city's social scene. She slipped into her custom-made red silk gown that cost more than most people's yearly salary. The dress hugged her curves perfectly, and the deep crimson color made her olive skin glow. Her long black hair was styled in an elegant updo, with a few strategic curls framing her face. She completed the look with ruby earrings that matched her engagement ring, a massive diamond surrounded by blood-red stones that Marcus had specially designed for her. As she made her way to the hotel in her chauffeur-driven Bentley, Isabella felt a rush of excitement. She loved these events where she could display her status and watch others try to curry favor with her. Being Marcus's fiancée meant that people treated her like royalty, and she had grown addicted to that power. The Grand Metropolitan's ballroom was already buzzing with activity when Isabella arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the elegantly dressed crowd, and waiters in crisp white uniforms moved smoothly between the guests, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The charity auction was set to begin in an hour, but, for now, it was all about networking and showing off. Isabella made her entrance slowly, savoring the way conversations paused as people turned to look at her. She nodded graciously to acquaintances and air-kissed the wives of other prominent men, all while keeping an eye out for Marcus. He was supposed to meet her here, though she knew his business often kept him occupied until late in the evening. "Isabella, darling," called out Margaret Thornton, the wife of a prominent judge. "You look absolutely stunning tonight." "Thank you, Margaret," Isabella replied with a practiced smile. "Is that a new necklace?" "It's lovely." Margaret beamed and touched the modest pearl necklace at her throat. "My husband surprised me with it for our anniversary." "Of course, it's nothing compared to your gorgeous pieces." Isabella fingered her ruby earrings smugly. "Marcus does spoil me. He says only the finest jewels are worthy of his future wife." As they chatted about the evening's auction items, Isabella noticed a young woman carrying a tray of champagne glasses. The waitress looked to be in her early 20s, with shoulder-length auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore the standard server uniform, a black dress with a white apron, and moved efficiently through the crowd without drawing attention to herself. There was something about the waitress that struck Isabella as different from the other service staff. She carried herself with quiet confidence, and her green eyes seemed to take in everything around her with sharp intelligence. When she approached their group to offer champagne, Isabella noticed that the girl's hands were steady and graceful, despite the chaos of the busy event. "Champagne, ladies?" the waitress asked politely. Margaret took a glass with a quick thank you, but Isabella barely acknowledged the girl's presence. In Isabella's world, service staff were essentially invisible, there to fulfill her needs but not worthy of real consideration. The waitress continued on her rounds, and Isabella returned her attention to the more important matter of establishing her social dominance for the evening. She moved through the crowd like a queen holding court, accepting compliments about her dress, her jewelry, and her upcoming wedding to Marcus. "When is the big day?" asked Patricia Delacroix, a fashion designer whose boutique catered to the city's elite women. "We're thinking spring," Isabella said airily. "Marcus wants to wait until after he closes his latest business deal. Something about acquiring several hotels in Europe. You know how these powerful men are, always thinking about expanding their empires." The truth was that Marcus had been somewhat evasive about their wedding plans lately. Whenever Isabella brought up specific dates or details, he would change the subject or claim he was too busy with work to focus on it. She pushed these concerns aside, telling herself that a man of Marcus's stature simply had a lot of responsibilities. As the evening progressed, Isabella found herself growing slightly irritated. Marcus still hadn't arrived, and, while she was enjoying the attention from the other guests, she preferred having him by her side to reinforce her status. People treated her differently when the powerful Marcus Blackwood was present, with even more deference and obvious envy. She decided to step onto the hotel's outdoor terrace for some fresh air and to call Marcus's phone. The terrace overlooked the city's glittering lights, and the cool evening breeze was refreshing after the warmth of the crowded ballroom. Isabella pulled out her phone and dialed Marcus's number, tapping her manicured fingers impatiently as it rang. "Hello, Isabella," Marcus answered on the fourth ring. His voice was as smooth and commanding as always, with that slight accent that she had never been able to place exactly. "Marcus, where are you? The gala started over an hour ago, and everyone keeps asking about you." "I'm handling some urgent business matters," he replied. "I may not be able to make it tonight after all." Isabella felt a flash of anger. "But this is important. The Whitemans are here, and the mayor specifically asked about you. I look ridiculous being here without my fiancée." "You're perfectly capable of representing us both," Marcus said coolly. "I have complete confidence in your social skills." Something in his tone made Isabella uneasy, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. Marcus had always been somewhat mysterious and unpredictable, but lately he seemed more distant than usual. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "You've been working such long hours lately, and we barely see each other anymore." "Everything is fine," Marcus assured her. "I'll make it up to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening." Before Isabella could respond, the line went dead. She stared at her phone in frustration, then slipped it back into her small beaded purse. She would have to make the best of the situation and handle the evening on her own. When she returned to the ballroom, the charity auction was about to begin. Isabella took her seat at one of the premium tables near the front, where other high-profile attendees were gathered. The auctioneer, a distinguished man in his 60s, began presenting the evening's items. The auction featured impressive pieces, original artwork, luxury vacation packages, and exclusive experiences that only the wealthy could afford. Isabella participated in the bidding for a few items, partly because she genuinely wanted them and partly to remind everyone of her financial status. When a diamond tennis bracelet came up for auction, Isabella decided she absolutely had to have it. The bidding started at $5,000, and several other women in the room showed interest. Isabella raised her paddle confidently, prepared to outbid anyone who dared compete with her. "10,000, called out a woman from the back of the room. 15,000, Isabella countered without hesitation. 20,000, came another bid from somewhere to her left. Isabella turned to see who was challenging her and spotted Victoria Sterling, the wife of a prominent tech entrepreneur. Victoria was known for her competitive nature and her impressive jewelry collection. Isabella felt her jaw clench with determination. 25,000, Isabella called out, her voice carrying clearly across the room. 30,000, Victoria responded immediately. The two women locked eyes across the ballroom, each unwilling to back down. The auctioneer looked pleased as the price continued to climb far beyond the bracelet's estimated value. Other guests watched the bidding war with fascination, murmuring among themselves about the rivalry playing out before them. 40,000, Isabella announced, her voice sharp with challenge. Victoria hesitated for a moment, clearly calculating whether the bracelet was worth that much. Isabella felt a surge of satisfaction, convinced she was about to win. But, then, Victoria smiled and raised her paddle again. 50,000. Isabella felt her confidence waver. $50,000 was a significant amount, even for someone with her resources. She glanced around the room and noticed that all eyes were on her, waiting to see if she would continue the fight or concede defeat. In that moment, Isabella's pride overrode her financial sense. She could not allow herself to be seen backing down in front of all these people, especially with Marcus not there to support her. 60,000, she declared, her voice ringing with false confidence. The room fell silent. Even Victoria looked surprised by the astronomical bid. The auctioneer called for any additional bids, but Victoria shook her head and sat back in her chair. Sold to the lady in red for $60,000, the auctioneer announced with enthusiasm. Isabella smiled triumphantly, though inside she was already regretting the impulsive decision. $60,000 for a tennis bracelet was excessive, even by her standards. But she had defended her reputation and reminded everyone that she was not to be underestimated. After the auction concluded, guests mingled again while the staff served dinner. Isabella found herself at the center of attention, with people congratulating her on her successful bid and commenting on her competitive spirit. She basked in the admiration, though a small part of her mind kept calculating the financial impact of her purchase. As she made her way toward the dining area, Isabella noticed the same auburn-haired waitress from earlier. The girl was clearing empty glasses from a table near the windows, working efficiently despite the late hour. Something about her calm demeanor in the midst of all the chaos struck Isabella as unusual. Their eyes met briefly as Isabella passed by, and, for a moment, Isabella had the strange sensation that the waitress was studying her rather than simply acknowledging her presence. The girl's green eyes seemed to hold a depth of knowledge that was unexpected in someone her age and position. Isabella dismissed the feeling as paranoia brought on by stress from the evening's events. After all, what could a simple waitress possibly know about her life or her problems? She continued on to dinner, where she spent the rest of the evening accepting compliments and maintaining her image as the powerful fiancée of Marcus Blackwood. But, as the night wore on, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting in her carefully controlled world. Marcus's absence, their earlier phone conversation, and even that brief moment with the waitress had left her feeling unsettled in a way she couldn't quite explain. She told herself she was being silly. Tomorrow, Marcus would be back to his usual attentive self, and this evening would just be a memory of another successful social appearance. She had no way of knowing that the quiet waitress she had barely noticed would soon turn her world completely upside down. The gala ended near midnight, with guests slowly filtering out into the cool night air. Isabella waited for her car, still wearing her triumphant smile but feeling oddly empty inside. As her Bentley pulled away from the hotel, she caught a glimpse of the waitress in the side mirror, standing near the hotel service entrance, finally finished with her long shift. Something about that image, the young woman standing alone under the streetlight while the wealthy guests departed in their luxury cars, stuck with Isabella long after she reached home. She couldn't understand why a random service worker would make such an impression on her, but the feeling persisted as she prepared for bed in her penthouse apartment. Isabella fell asleep that night unaware that her path had already crossed with someone who would challenge everything she believed about power, privilege, and the careful image she had spent years constructing. The quiet waitress named Emma Chen had been watching and listening more carefully than Isabella could have imagined, and their next encounter would be far less subtle than their brief moment in the ballroom. The morning newspapers would later describe the charity gala as one of the season's most successful social events, raising over $2 million for children's hospitals. But, for Isabella Rodriguez, it would mark the beginning of the end of her reign as the unchallenged queen of the city's social elite. 2 weeks after the charity gala, Isabella's world began to crack in ways she never could have anticipated. It started with small things, Marcus canceling their dinner reservations, his phone going straight to voicemail for hours at a time, and a general sense that he was pulling away from her. But Isabella was determined to maintain appearances, even as doubts crept into her mind. She decided to surprise him at his downtown office building, bringing his favorite lunch from an exclusive French restaurant. The Blackwood Corporation occupied the top 15 floors of one of the city's tallest skyscrapers, and Isabella had always felt a thrill riding the private elevator to Marcus's penthouse office. But, when she arrived, Marcus's assistant, David Harrison, looked uncomfortable as he explained that Marcus was in meetings all afternoon and couldn't be disturbed. "Even for me?" Isabella asked, flashing the smile that usually got her whatever she wanted. David shifted nervously. "I'm sorry, Miss Rodriguez." He was very specific about not being interrupted. Isabella left the lunch with David and departed feeling humiliated and confused. In the past, Marcus would have dropped any needing to see her. Something was definitely wrong, but she had no idea how to fix it. That evening, Isabella decided to distract herself by going shopping at her favorite boutique district. She spent several hours buying expensive clothes and jewelry, charging everything to the credit cards Marcus had given her. The familiar ritual of acquiring beautiful things usually made her feel better, but tonight it felt hollow. As she was leaving the last shop, laden with designer bags, Isabella heard someone call her name. She turned to see Patricia Delacroix approaching, but the fashion designer's usual warm smile was replaced by an expression of concern. "Isabella, darling, I'm glad I ran into you," Patricia said. "I wanted to thank you again for recommending my boutique to your friends. Business has been wonderful lately." "Of course," Isabella replied, though she couldn't remember making any recent recommendations. "You design beautiful pieces." Patricia hesitated, then stepped closer. "I also wanted to ask, is everything all right? I heard some concerning rumors at the country club yesterday." Isabella felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of rumors?" "Well," Patricia looked around nervously, "some people are saying that Marcus has been seen around town with other women. I'm sure it's just gossip, but I thought you should know what people are saying." The shopping bags in Isabella's hands suddenly felt like they weighed 100 pounds each. She forced herself to smile calmly. People love to create drama where none exists. Marcus has many business associates, both male and female. I'm sure that's all anyone saw. Patricia nodded quickly, clearly relieved to drop the uncomfortable subject. "Of course. I knew it was nothing serious. I'll see you at the Hendersons' party next week?" "Absolutely," Isabella managed, though she had no idea if Marcus would be accompanying her to that event either. After Patricia left, Isabella sat in her car for several minutes, trying to process what she had just heard. The idea that Marcus might be cheating on her was almost inconceivable. He was the one who had pursued her, who had proposed with that magnificent ring, who had made her feel like the most desirable woman in the world. She drove home to her penthouse apartment, her mind racing with doubts and possibilities. Once there, she poured herself a large glass of wine and tried to think logically about the situation. Patricia had said rumors, which meant multiple people were talking about this. That was concerning, but it still didn't mean anything definitive. Isabella decided to take a more direct approach. She called Marcus's phone, prepared to have a frank conversation about their relationship and these troubling rumors. "Hello, Isabella," Marcus answered, but his tone was distant and distracted. "Marcus, we need to talk. When can you come over?" "I'm quite busy this week," he said. "Perhaps we could speak on the phone." "No," Isabella said firmly. "This needs to be face to face." "I'll come to your place then." There was a long pause. "That's not convenient tonight. I have business associates coming over." Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. In all the time they had been together, Marcus had never refused to see her. He was always available for her, always made her feel like the most important person in his life. "Marcus, what's going on? You've been different lately, and I'm hearing things around town." "What kind of things?" His voice had an edge to it that Isabella had never heard before. "People are saying they've seen you with other women." "I defended you, of course, but I need to hear from you that these rumors are baseless." Another long pause. Isabella could hear voices in the background, and one of them sounded distinctly feminine. "Isabella," Marcus said finally, "perhaps we should discuss our future plans when I return from my business trip next week." "What business trip? You didn't mention any trip." It came up suddenly. "I'll call you when I get back." The line went dead, leaving Isabella staring at her phone in shock. In all their time together, Marcus had never dismissed her so coldly. The confident, loving man who had swept her off her feet seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone distant and evasive. Isabella spent the next week in a strange state of limbo. She maintained her social commitments, attended the Hendersons' party alone, claiming Marcus was away on business, and tried to act as if nothing was wrong. But, inside, she was consumed with worry and confusion. She found herself paying more attention to the rumors circulating in their social circle. At first, she had dismissed them as jealous gossip, but now she listened more carefully. The stories were becoming more specific and consistent. Marcus had been seen at expensive restaurants with a stunning blonde woman. They had been spotted at the theater together, looking very intimate. Someone claimed to have seen them entering his apartment building together late at night. By the end of the week, Isabella was desperate for answers. She decided to do something she had never imagined herself capable of. She would spy on Marcus to learn the truth. She drove to his apartment building on Friday evening and parked across the street where she could watch the entrance. Isabella felt ridiculous sitting in her car like a private investigator, but she needed to know what was happening to her relationship. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Isabella was beginning to think this was a foolish waste of time when a familiar figure emerged from the building. It was Marcus, but he looked different than she had ever seen him. He was dressed more casually, and there was an energy about him that seemed almost predatory. A few minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up, and a woman stepped out. Isabella's heart sank as she recognized the woman from society photos, Diana Westbrook, a wealthy widow who had recently moved to the city. Diana was in her 30s, sophisticated and beautiful, with platinum blonde hair and an elegant style that rivaled Isabella's own. Isabella watched in horror as Marcus greeted Diana with a passionate kiss that lasted much longer than any casual greeting. They disappeared into his building together, and Isabella sat in her car feeling like her world was collapsing around her. The next morning, Isabella woke up with swollen eyes from crying and a determination to confront Marcus directly. She drove to his building again, this time planning to go up to his apartment and demand an explanation. But, as she approached the building, she saw Marcus and Diana emerging together. They were dressed for the day, clearly having spent the night together. Diana was wearing one of Marcus's dress shirts over her clothes from the night before, the unmistakable outfit of a woman leaving her lover's apartment. Isabella ducked behind a parked car, watching as Marcus helped Diana into her vehicle. Before she drove away, they shared another passionate kiss that confirmed Isabella's worst fears. When Diana's car disappeared, Isabella emerged from her hiding spot, her face flushed with humiliation and rage. She marched into the building and rode the elevator to Marcus's penthouse, her hands shaking with anger. She pounded on his door until he answered, looking surprised and somewhat annoyed to see her. "Isabella? What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" she repeated incredulously. "I'm your fiancé. I just saw you kissing another woman." Marcus stepped aside to let her in, but his expression remained cold and detached. "We need to discuss this rationally." "Rationally?" Isabella's voice rose to a near shriek. "There's nothing rational about what I just saw. Are you having an affair?" Marcus walked to his bar and poured himself a drink, not offering one to Isabella. "Affair implies deception. I've been quite open about my intentions." "Open? What are you talking about? When have you been open about cheating on me?" Marcus turned to face her, and, for a moment, Isabella thought she saw something inhuman flicker in his dark eyes. "Isabella, our arrangement has served its purpose. I'm moving on to other interests." "Arrangement?" Isabella felt like she was in a nightmare. "We're engaged. We're supposed to be getting married. Are we?" Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, the same box that had contained her engagement ring when he proposed. "Because I don't recall setting a date or making any concrete plans." Isabella looked down at her left hand, where the massive diamond ring caught the morning light. But, you proposed. You said you loved me. You said I was going to be your wife." Marcus smiled, but it was not the warm expression she remembered. It was cold and predatory, revealing teeth that seemed sharper than she remembered. "I said many things, Isabella. Perhaps you heard what you wanted to hear rather than what I actually meant." The cruelty in his voice was like a physical blow. Isabella had never imagined that the man she loved could speak to her with such callous indifference. "Who is she?" Isabella demanded, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. "Diana is more suitable to my current needs," Marcus said casually, as if he were discussing a business transaction. "She has certain qualities that I find more appealing than what you offer." "More appealing?" Isabella's voice cracked. "What does she have that I don't?" "I'm beautiful, I'm from a good family, I can give you everything you want." Marcus laughed, and the sound sent chills down Isabella's spine. "My dear Isabella, you have no idea what I truly want or what I'm capable of obtaining." There was something in his tone that made Isabella take a step backward. For the first time in their relationship, she felt genuinely frightened of Marcus. There was an aura of danger around him that she had never noticed before, or perhaps had chosen to ignore. "I want you to leave," Marcus said, his voice taking on a commanding tone that brooked no argument. "And I want you to return the ring." Isabella looked down at the engagement ring that had been the symbol of her future happiness and security. The thought of removing it felt like admitting that her entire world had been built on lies. "No," she said quietly. "If you want it back, you'll have to take it from me." Marcus's eyes flashed with something that definitely wasn't human. For a moment, Isabella could have sworn she saw a predator looking at her through Marcus's face. "Very well," he said softly. "Keep it as a reminder of how easily dreams can turn to nightmares." Isabella fled from his apartment, tears streaming down her face. She drove home in a daze, trying to process the complete destruction of her life in the span of a single conversation. Over the next few days, word of their breakup spread through high society like wildfire. Isabella found herself facing a level of social humiliation she had never experienced. People who had once courted her favor now looked at her with pity or barely concealed satisfaction at her downfall. The worst part was that Diana Westbrook quickly took Isabella's place in Marcus's public life. They appeared together at all the exclusive events where Isabella had once reigned supreme. Diana wore beautiful gowns and expensive jewelry, and Marcus looked at her with the same intensity he had once reserved for Isabella. Isabella tried to maintain her dignity and continue attending social functions, but it was torture. Every appearance of Marcus and Diana together was like salt in her wounds. She began to understand how brutal high society could be when you were no longer protected by wealth and status. It was during this dark period that Isabella found herself at Café Luna, a trendy downtown restaurant where she often met friends for lunch. She was sitting alone at a table near the window, picking at a salad she had no appetite for, when she noticed a familiar figure among the waitstaff. It was the auburn-haired girl from the charity gala, the one whose green eyes had seemed to see too much. Today, the girl was wearing the café's uniform and moving between tables with the same quiet efficiency Isabella remembered from that night. As the waitress approached her table, Isabella felt a strange mix of recognition and embarrassment. Here was someone who had seen her at the height of her social power, and now was witnessing her very public fall from grace. "Can I get you anything else?" the waitress asked politely. Isabella looked up and found herself studying the young woman more carefully than she had at the gala. Up close, she could see that the girl was probably in her early 20s, with delicate features and an intelligence in her eyes that seemed unusual for someone in her position. "I'm sorry," Isabella said impulsively, "but weren't you working at the charity gala at the Grand Metropolitan a few weeks ago?" The waitress nodded. "I work several catering events around the city." "You were the woman in the red dress who won the diamond bracelet auction." Isabella was surprised that the girl remembered her so specifically. "Yes, that was me. I'm Isabella Rodriguez." "Emma Chen," the waitress replied. "I remember you spent quite a lot on that bracelet." There was something in Emma's tone that made Isabella look at her more sharply. It wasn't judgmental exactly, but there was an observation there that went beyond polite conversation. "It was for charity," Isabella said defensively. Emma smiled slightly. "Of course. Though I heard your fiancé wasn't there that night. That must have been disappointing." Isabella felt her cheeks flush. How could a waitress possibly know about her personal life? Marcus had business to attend to. "Marcus Blackwood," Emma said, and it wasn't a question. "I've heard he's quite the powerful man in this city." Something in Emma's tone made Isabella uncomfortable. There was a knowledge there that seemed inappropriate for a casual conversation with a waitress. "I should go," Isabella said, reaching for her purse. "Could I have my check, please?" "Of course," Emma said, but she didn't move away from the table immediately. "Though I hope everything works out well for you, Miss Rodriguez. Sometimes the most powerful men aren't what they appear to be." Isabella stared at Emma in shock. The comment was too specific, too knowing to be coincidental. "What do you mean by that?" Isabella demanded. Emma's green eyes met hers directly. "I just mean that appearances can be deceiving. Especially in this city." With that cryptic comment, Emma walked away to attend to other customers, leaving Isabella sitting alone with a growing sense that this waitress knew something important about her situation. As Isabella left the cafe, she couldn't shake the feeling that her encounter with Emma Chen had been more than coincidental. There was something about the young woman that didn't fit with her humble job or her quiet demeanor. That night, Isabella lay awake thinking about Emma's words and the strange intensity in her green eyes. She had the unsettling feeling that Emma knew secrets about Marcus that Isabella herself was only beginning to discover. It would be several more days before Isabella learned just how dangerous those secrets were, and how much Emma Chen truly knew about the man who had broken her heart and shattered her world. The confrontation that would change everything began on a rainy Thursday evening at the Crimson Rose, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. Isabella had forced herself to accept an invitation to dinner with Margaret Thornton and several other society wives, determined not to let her personal problems completely destroy her social life. The Crimson Rose was Marcus's favorite restaurant, and Isabella had been dreading the possibility of running into him there. But she refused to let fear keep her trapped at home, so she had dressed in her most confident outfit, a black designer dress that hugged her curves and made her feel powerful. The dinner started pleasantly enough, with the usual society gossip and discussions about upcoming charity events. Isabella was beginning to relax when Margaret suddenly grabbed her arm and nodded toward the restaurant's entrance. "Isn't that Marcus?" Margaret whispered. Isabella's blood ran cold as she turned to look. Marcus was indeed entering the restaurant, but he wasn't alone. Diana Westbrook was on his arm, wearing a stunning emerald green gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. They looked perfect together, wealthy, powerful, and completely absorbed in each other. The hostess led them to a prime table in the center of the dining room, where they would be visible to everyone in the restaurant. Isabella realized with growing humiliation that this was probably intentional on Marcus's part. He was making a public statement about his new relationship while simultaneously rubbing Isabella's nose in her rejection. "Should we leave?" Margaret asked quietly, clearly sensing Isabella's distress. "Absolutely not," Isabella replied through gritted teeth. "I have every right to be here." But, as the evening progressed, Isabella found it increasingly difficult to focus on the conversation at her table. She kept glancing over at Marcus and Diana, watching them share intimate conversations and laugh at private jokes. Diana was everything Isabella had once been in Marcus's life, the center of his attention, the recipient of his charm, the woman who made him smile with genuine pleasure. Worse still, other diners in the restaurant were clearly watching both tables, undoubtedly speculating about the drama playing out before them. Isabella could feel their stares and whispered comments like physical weights pressing down on her shoulders. The breaking point came when Marcus leaned across his table to kiss Diana passionately, right there in front of everyone. The gesture was so bold and public that Isabella knew it was meant for her to see. He was claiming Diana as his new prize while simultaneously telling Isabella that their relationship meant nothing to him. Isabella excused herself from her table and headed toward the ladies' room, needing a few minutes to compose herself before she completely lost her dignity. But, as she walked past Marcus's table, she couldn't resist stopping. "Marcus," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the nearby tables. He looked up at her with mild annoyance, as if she were an unwelcome interruption rather than the woman he had claimed to love just weeks earlier. "Isabella. How lovely to see you." His tone was polite but cold. "I wanted to congratulate you both," Isabella continued, forcing herself to smile. "You make such a striking couple." Diana smiled graciously, apparently unaware of the history between Isabella and Marcus. "Thank you. You're very kind." "Yes," Isabella said, her smile growing sharper. "Marcus has always had excellent taste in women. Though I suppose his interests can be rather temporary." Marcus's eyes flashed with warning, but Isabella was beyond caring about his feelings. "I'm sure Diana is aware that Marcus tends to lose interest once the novelty wears off," Isabella continued sweetly. "After all, he did propose to me just 6 months ago with that beautiful ring." She held up her left hand, where Marcus's engagement ring still sparkled on her finger. The gesture was petty and desperate, but Isabella was past the point of caring about dignity. Diana's smile faltered slightly as she glanced between Isabella and Marcus, clearly beginning to understand the situation. "Isabella," Marcus said, his voice carrying a dangerous undertone, perhaps we could continue this conversation another time. Oh, but I'm enjoying getting to know Diana, Isabella replied. Tell me, dear, has Marcus mentioned his unusual sleeping habits? He's quite the night owl. Sometimes I wondered if he ever slept at all. There was something in her words that made Marcus go very still. Diana looked confused, but Marcus was staring at Isabella with an expression that made her suddenly remember how frightened she had felt during their breakup conversation. You should be very careful about what you say, Marcus said quietly, and there was a threat in his voice that made several nearby diners turn to look. Should I? Isabella asked, emboldened by the public setting. I think Diana deserves to know what kind of man she's dating. For instance, did you know that Marcus often disappears for days at a time with no explanation? And he has the strangest friends who only seem to come around after dark. That's enough, Marcus interrupted, starting to rise from his chair. But Isabella was on a roll now, fueled by weeks of humiliation and heartbreak. And the way he drinks his steaks, practically raw. It's like he's some kind of... She never got to finish the sentence. A voice from behind her cut through the tension with calm authority. Excuse me, but is everything all right here? Everyone turned to see Emma Chen approaching their table. She was wearing the Crimson Roses server uniform and carrying a tray, apparently on duty for the evening. But there was something different about her demeanor, a confidence and presence that hadn't been as obvious during their previous encounters. We're fine, Marcus said curtly, clearly wanting to end the confrontation. But Emma didn't retreat. Instead, she looked directly at Isabella with those penetrating green eyes. Miss Rodriguez, you seem upset. Perhaps you'd like to step outside for some fresh air? There was something in Emma's tone that suggested this wasn't just a polite offer from a concerned waitress. Isabella had the strange feeling that Emma was trying to save her from something, though she couldn't imagine what. I'm perfectly fine, Isabella insisted, though her voice was shaking with emotion. Emma's gaze shifted to Marcus, and Isabella could have sworn she saw something like recognition pass between them. Marcus's face went pale, and, for the first time since Isabella had known him, he looked genuinely worried. Mr. Blackwood, Emma said politely, how nice to see you again. Marcus's jaw tightened. I don't believe we've been introduced. Haven't we? Emma smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm Emma Chen. I've been working in this city for quite some time now. I tend to notice the influential residents. The way she said influential made it sound like an accusation. Diana looked increasingly uncomfortable, clearly sensing undercurrents in the conversation that she didn't understand. Perhaps we should return to our meal, Diana suggested quietly. Excellent idea, Emma agreed. Though I should mention that tonight's special is particularly good. We're serving it very rare, just the way some of our regular customers prefer. The comment seemed innocent enough, but Marcus reacted as if Emma had slapped him. He stood up abruptly, throwing his napkin down on the table. We're leaving, he announced to Diana. But we haven't finished dinner, Diana protested. Now, Marcus said, and there was something in his voice that brooked no argument. As Marcus helped Diana gather her things, Emma turned her attention back to Isabella. Miss Rodriguez, she said softly, I really think you should come with me. There are some things you should know. Isabella looked between Emma's serious face and Marcus's obvious agitation. Something significant was happening here, something beyond the simple drama of a love triangle. What kinds of things? Isabella asked. Emma glanced around the dining room, where other patrons were watching the scene with undisguised fascination. Not here, Emma said. But, if you're interested in learning the truth about Marcus Blackwood, meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow night at midnight. Come alone. Before Isabella could respond, Emma walked away, disappearing back into the restaurant's service areas. Marcus and Diana left quickly, with Marcus casting one last threatening look in Isabella's direction. Isabella returned to her own table in a daze, barely able to focus on Margaret's concerned questions about what had just happened. She made her excuses and left early, her mind racing with questions about Emma's mysterious behavior and Marcus's obvious fear of the young waitress. That night, Isabella lay awake trying to make sense of the evening's events. Emma Chen was clearly more than just a simple waitress, But what could she possibly know about Marcus that would frighten him so much? By the time midnight approached the following evening, Isabella's curiosity had overcome her caution. She drove to Riverside Park, a secluded area near the city's waterfront where couples sometimes went for romantic walks during the day. At night, it was deserted and slightly ominous. Emma was waiting for her near a bench overlooking the river, but she looked different than she had in her work uniforms. She was dressed in dark clothes that seemed to blend with the shadows, and there was an alertness about her posture that reminded Isabella of a predator waiting for prey. "You came," Emma said as Isabella approached. "I wasn't sure you would." "What is this about?" Isabella demanded. "What could you possibly know about Marcus that I don't?" Emma studied her for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. "How much do you really know about your ex-fiancé's business dealings?" Emma asked finally. "He owns hotels and restaurants, some real estate ventures. He's very successful." Emma nodded. "And have you ever wondered why all his businesses are open only at night? Why his business meetings always happen after dark? Why you never saw him during daylight hours unless it was absolutely necessary?" Isabella opened her mouth to dismiss these observations, then realized that Emma was right. Marcus had always been a creature of the night, preferring late dinners, midnight meetings, and dawn farewells. "That doesn't mean anything," Isabella said weakly. "Some people are night owls." "And the way he drinks his wine?" Emma continued relentlessly. "Always red, always room temperature, and he drinks it like he's dying of thirst?" Isabella remembered the strange way Marcus consumed his wine, almost desperately, as if it were medicine rather than alcohol. "What are you suggesting?" Isabella asked, though part of her was afraid to hear the answer. Emma stepped closer, and, in the moonlight, Isabella could see that her green eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. "I'm suggesting that Marcus Blackwood is not entirely human," Emma said quietly. "And neither am I." Before Isabella could respond, Emma's appearance began to change. Her canine teeth elongated into fangs, her fingernails grew into claws, and her eyes blazed with supernatural fire. Isabella stumbled backward, her mind refusing to accept what she was seeing. "You're insane," Isabella whispered. "This isn't possible." "Marcus is a vampire," Emma continued as if Isabella hadn't spoken. "One of the most powerful and dangerous of his kind. He's been using this city as his feeding ground for decades, and you were just his latest cover story." "Vampires don't exist," Isabella protested, even as her memories of Marcus's strange behavior began to make horrifying sense. "They do," Emma said, her fangs glinting in the moonlight. "And I should know, because I'm a vampire hunter. I've been tracking Marcus Blackwood for over 3 years." Isabella's legs gave out, and she sank onto the park bench, her mind reeling. "The women," she whispered. "All those women he was seen with before me. Most of them disappeared," Emma confirmed grimly. "The ones who got too close to learning his secret. You're lucky he found Diana to replace you, or you might have suffered the same fate." Isabella thought about Diana Westbrook's beauty and vitality, and a chill ran down her spine. "We have to warn her," Isabella said urgently. "That's why I revealed myself to you," Emma replied. "I need your help to get close to Marcus and Diana. He's too suspicious of me now, but he might not expect an attack that involves his discarded fiancée." Isabella stared at Emma, this young woman who she had dismissed as an insignificant waitress, who was actually some kind of supernatural warrior. "What do you want me to do?" Isabella asked. Emma smiled, and, for the first time, it was a genuinely warm expression. "Tomorrow night, Marcus is hosting a private party at his penthouse. Diana will be there, along with several other members of his circle. I need you to get me inside." "How?" "You still have your engagement ring," Emma pointed out. "And you still know all the right people. You can get an invitation to that party, and you can bring a guest." Isabella looked down at the massive diamond ring that she had refused to return to Marcus. Suddenly, it felt like a weapon rather than a symbol of lost love. "If I do this," Isabella said slowly, "what happens to Marcus?" Emma's expression grew cold and determined. What should have happened to him decades ago? He faces justice for all the innocent people he's killed. Isabella thought about Diana, about all the women who had come before her, about her own narrow escape from whatever fate Marcus had planned for her. "All right," she said finally. "I'll help you." The next evening, Isabella stood before her mirror, preparing for what might be the most dangerous night of her life. She had managed to secure an invitation to Marcus's party through a mutual friend, claiming she wanted to congratulate him and Diana on their engagement. Emma arrived at Isabella's apartment an hour before the party, transformed once again into the appearance of an elegant young socialite. She wore a sophisticated black cocktail dress and had styled her auburn hair into an elegant updo. To anyone who didn't know better, she looked like just another wealthy young woman attending an exclusive party. "Are you ready for this?" Emma asked as they prepared to leave. Isabella fingered the engagement ring on her finger, the ring she planned to return to Marcus in a very public and final way. "I'd been ready for this since the moment he broke my heart," Isabella replied. As they drove toward Marcus's penthouse, Isabella felt a strange sense of liberation. For weeks, she had felt like a victim, humiliated, rejected, and powerless. But tonight, she was taking control of her own story. The party was already in full swing when they arrived at Marcus's building. The penthouse was filled with the city's elite, all drinking expensive wine and championing in the subdued lighting that Marcus preferred. Diana was at the center of attention, wearing Isabella's old role like a custom-made gown. Marcus spotted Isabella almost immediately, and she saw surprise and wariness flash across his face. "Isabella," he said, approaching with Diana at his side. "This is unexpected." "I wanted to return something that belongs to you," Isabella said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. She began removing the engagement ring from her finger. Marcus's eyes narrowed, clearly suspecting some kind of trap. "How thoughtful," he said cautiously. Isabella held the ring up so it caught the light, drawing the attention of other party guests. "I also wanted to share some fascinating stories about our relationship," Isabella continued, her voice carrying across the room. "For instance, Diana, did you know that Marcus has never once taken me out during daylight hours?" Diana laughed nervously. "Marcus works such long days. Evenings are really the only time he has free. And, have you noticed his unusual dietary preferences?" Isabella pressed on. "The way he likes his meat practically raw, the way he drinks wine like it's water?" Marcus stepped closer to Isabella, his eyes beginning to show that inhuman gleam she had glimpsed before. "Isabella, you're making a scene," he said in a low, threatening voice. "Am I?" Isabella smiled brightly. "I'm just sharing some observations with your new fiancé. For instance, have you told Diana about your collection of antique mirrors?" "Oh wait, that's right, you don't own any mirrors at all, do you, Marcus?" Several guests were now listening openly to the conversation, their faces showing confusion and growing concern. "That's enough," Marcus snarled, and Isabella could see his canine teeth beginning to elongate. But before he could move toward her, Emma stepped out from behind a pillar where she had been watching and waiting. "Actually," Emma said clearly, "I think the party is just getting started." Marcus spun toward Emma, his face transforming into something monstrous as his supernatural nature fully revealed itself. Screams erupted from the party guests as they witnessed their host's terrible transformation. "You," Marcus hissed, his fangs now fully extended. "Hello, Marcus," Emma replied calmly, producing a silver stake from her purse. "Did you miss me?" What followed was a battle that Isabella would remember for the rest of her life. Marcus lunged at Emma with inhuman speed, but the vampire hunter was ready for him. She moved like a dancer, spinning away from his attacks and striking back with precision and deadly grace. The party guests fled in terror, but Isabella remained, transfixed by the supernatural combat unfolding before her. Diana had fainted near the bar, overwhelmed by the revelation of her lover's true nature. The fight raged across the penthouse, destroying expensive furniture and artwork as Marcus and Emma battled for supremacy. Marcus was stronger and faster, but Emma was skilled and determined, fighting with the fury of someone who had seen too many innocent victims. In the end, it was Isabella who provided the decisive moment. As Marcus gained the upper hand and pinned Emma against the wall, Isabella grabbed a silver letter opener from Marcus's desk and drove it into his back. Marcus howled in pain and rage, spinning toward Isabella with murder in his eyes. But Emma used his distraction to strike with her stake, driving it directly into his heart. Marcus Blackwood, the vampire king who had terrorized the city for decades, crumbled to ash before their eyes. In the aftermath, as police and paramedics dealt with the traumatized party guests, Isabella and Emma stood on the penthouse balcony watching the sunrise over the city. "What happens now?" Isabella asked. Emma smiled, looking younger and more peaceful than Isabella had ever seen her. "Now you get to live your real life," Emma replied. "Free from monsters and manipulation." Isabella looked down at her hand, where the pale band of skin showed where Marcus's engagement ring had been. For the first time in months, she felt truly free. "And you?" Isabella asked. "Will you keep hunting vampires?" "There are more out there," Emma confirmed. "But tonight, we saved a lot of innocent people. That's something to be proud of." As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the city, Isabella realized that her humiliation had led to her liberation. She had lost her status as Marcus Blackwood's fiancée, but she had gained something far more valuable, the knowledge that she was stronger and braver than she had ever imagined. The newspapers would later report Marcus's death as the result of a home invasion gone wrong, but Isabella knew the truth. The quiet waitress who had served champagne at charity galas was actually a hero who had saved countless lives. And Isabella Rodriguez, former socialite and rejected fiancé, had helped bring down a monster. It was a story she would never be able to tell publicly, but it was also a story that had given her life real meaning for the first time. The vampire king was dead, and the woman everyone thought they could dismiss had been the one to deliver the final blow. In the end, that was a victory worth more than any diamond ring or social status could ever be.